When you put a child up for adoption, you are no longer legally their parent. Yes, you are still their biological mother, but whoever adopted that child is now legally their parent. It can become a little bit tricky when you let someone like your mother adopt your child, like I did. However, she is still legally the parent, and you no longer have rights to parent that child, legally speaking. And if the parent, the adoptive mother, has certain rules about religion, school, electronics, those kinds of things, that is their right to have as a parent, and you as the sister now have to abide by those particular set of rules and regulations because you are not the parent. Every state is a little bit different, and if you did want visitation, that's something that the adoptive mother would have to agree to. And sometimes whenever we put our child up for adoption because we're in addiction or whatever, us no longer being in that frame of mind, no longer being in addiction, does not automatically qualify us to have that child back. It also doesn't give us the right to try to absolve our guilt for being in addiction, for putting our child up for adoption, by going into that child's life and trying to focus everything about us wanting to get them back. Is that what is best for the child in that particular moment? And that's what there are court systems for. However, in my opinion, once you terminate your legal right to that child, I see it as pretty selfish of you to then try to take away the rights that you gave to someone else just because you're no longer in the position that you were in at that particular time. I gave my child up for adoption to my mother when I was 16 and very addicted to drugs. There were multiple times throughout my life where I wasn't addicted and I was living a sober, healthy, happy life. But I had to respect that my mom was the parent. I was no longer the parent. And I had to respect that if she wanted things done a certain way, that I could either do them that way or I could not visit with my child. And sometimes it was easier to not visit with my child. That is hard to say, but I was no longer allowed to make decisions. And that's the point that I'm trying to get at. I was also not in a place or a position to be like, oh, I'm sober now, so I want my child back. I feel like that is incredibly selfish to do, and I feel like it's done with the intention of trying to absolve some sort of guilt that you had or have because you were in a state of addiction whenever you made that choice. But you still made the choice, and that child has now been in the care of someone else for however long it has been, and they're stable, they're functioning, and it does not seem like it would be in the best interest of the child to remove that child from the stability that they do have, even though you feel like your mother is trying to control the situation. Of course she's trying to control the situation. She's the one in control of the children or the child because you gave that power to her. It's a very sticky situation when this involves family. It's obviously very different when it doesn't involve family because these people are, sometimes states away and you don't really get to see the child. But when it's family, sometimes you are putting yourself around your mother and your children because you want to see your child. You no longer have the right to parent that child. And I don't know what the laws look like in every state. If you are allowed to get visitation, I never went to get visitation because it wasn't something that I felt I needed to do. I was still able to see my daughter even though it was very rare. I was still able to see her and have a relationship with her, even though she didn't really want one with me, which is totally fine. I get it. Not everything is black and white, and sometimes we have to live with the choices that we made when we were in our addiction and the consequences that come from that. And sometimes the consequence that comes from that is that we are no longer allowed to parent the children that we birthed. And we have to respect the people who are and allow them to do the job that we thought at that time was what was best for them. Even if our feelings have changed because we're sober, we still made the decision to trust them to parent that child, and we have to honor that decision regardless of what our guilt or anger or whatever our emotions are. Let me know what you think about this, because a lot of people do not agree with me, and that's okay. But I made the decision to put my child up for adoption. I was too young. I knew I was too young. I was heavily into drugs. I knew I could not parent a child, and it never really crossed my mind to ever try to get her back. Because in my mind, adoption is adoption. That is their parent now, and I am no longer the mother. You tell me what you think. I know sometimes it's hard to wrap our minds around situations like this. There is a lot of nuance involved with adoption, especially when you allow your family member to adopt your child. But I do think that it's a discussion that everyone needs to have. If you have been put in a situation where you have been under the influence and have made some decisions that maybe you regret now that you're sober. Because we can't put the responsibility on the child. We can't be like, oh, well, they want to come home. They want to live with me. Because, of course, the children are going to want to go where they feel like they're going to be able to have things that are different. But we all know the grass is not always greener on the other side. So just because it's something that they want now doesn't mean that after it happens, 6 months later, they're going to be like, well, now I want to go back to my mom, my adoptive mom's house. And that back and forth is just as toxic, if not worse, than just allowing them to stay in the home that they are already in. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.